One evening, after dinner, Mom and I sat on the terrace due to the cold weather. There, she began to tell me that our town, Peril, was full of stories that would send shivers down anyone's spine, and as I already knew what was coming, I prepared to listen.
Are you ready for this?
The Priest and the Devil. She told me that when she was a teenager, a priest arrived who used to say in his sermons that he had the devil under his feet, and he would trample on it whenever he pleased. The congregation in the church would applaud him every time he uttered iconic phrases like that against the said character, and Mom began to feel a certain attraction to the reverend. It turned out that he only did it to receive much more money in each offering, and gradually, good contributions started coming in until the girls began to court him. The priest took advantage of them, and when Mom and her group of friends found out, they decided that it was not right for someone like him to do that, and they all lost interest, all except my mother. In no time, those girls, mostly teenagers, who slept with him embarked on the path of witchcraft, and everyone in the town began to look at the Reverend with different eyes. One of the terrifying episodes involving these witches was experienced by my mom. During those days, my grandparents had to leave urgently, and my mother stayed at her best friend's house. They went out happily that night, walking cheerfully while eating ice cream, and time passed quickly. It was clear that neither of them expected what would happen later. They went to bed together, and sleep quickly took over, although my mom woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and found that her best friend was washing dishes at that hour. She immediately told her to go to bed, and her best friend replied that she would as soon as she finished. What was strange was that she always saw her friend from behind, never turned to look at my mother, but her voice and clothing were the same, so she didn't doubt it. When she returned to bed, she noticed that her best friend was lying there. She woke her up quickly and confirmed that it was indeed her. She told her what had happened, and both of them rushed to the kitchen, but they only found the clothes on the floor in front of the sink. It was the same clothing that her best friend had been wearing, as if someone had woven it to create an exact replica. Between the two of them, they agreed not to say anything, solely out of fear that they wouldn't let my mother stay with her best friend anymore, or even worse, that they would forbid their friendship. They continued attending the priest's masses as if nothing had happened, and he kept on proclaiming that the devil was beneath his feet, with people cheering and applauding. The number of people who gave generous tithes dwindled, but the church still filled up. When they least expected it, things took a turn for the worse in the town. It wasn't just the witches anymore. Many young people started playing with the Ouija board in secret. Mom distanced herself from her friends when they became involved with some boys who had convinced them to play. Gradually, they started blaming the priest for everything that was happening, and he claimed that he had come to put an end to the evil and that the devil was challenging him. He had a talent for winning people over and deceiving them, and his profession aided him in this endeavor. To put an end to the rumors that he had encounters with young girls, the priest's wife and their 2 children moved to the town. Yes, the rumors ceased, but that was it. Mom told me that the girls stopped pursuing him, including those who had become witches. Eventually, even they abandoned their practices, but Mom's curiosity persisted. One rainy day, she decided to bathe in the rain by the edge of the town's embankment, and that's when she saw the priest walking nearby. She decided to follow him, and that's when she discovered that he was meeting with my mother's best friend. They spent a long time talking in the rain before they left and locked themselves in the church. It was very obvious what was going on, but Mom didn't wait for them to come out and went home, feeling very confused. Her best friend had told her that she was no longer interested in the priest. The next day, when she met her friend, Mom confronted her, but her friend insisted that she hadn't been out in the rain, let alone met the priest at that hour. Her older brother confirmed this because they had been together at their house. Mom told them what had happened, and they believed it might have been one of the witches, just as had happened with them. It was then that they received the news that the priest's house was engulfed in flames. Almost the entire town gathered around the house, but they could only wait for the flames to extinguish themselves due to their enormity or attempt to put them out together, but it was already too late. In that incident, the priest's wife and children perished, as he was not present. However, he did not leave the town but stopped proclaiming that he had the devil trampled underfoot in his sermons. No one approached the burned down house until one day, several of my mother's friends, along with her best friend, convinced her to go and investigate since the police were no longer watching the place. Most of the things had been removed, so there wasn't much they could find, but their trip was not in vain. On the charred bed of the priest, they found a note with 2 bloodstains, as if someone had grabbed it and put it back in its place. No one dared to touch the piece of paper, but they did read the words written on it.
I thought you had me trampled underfoot.
I thought you had me trampled underfoot. Many believed it could have been anyone in the town trying to scare the priest away, but why go to such lengths and take away his wife and children? Was it because of everything that was happening? For others, it was clear who had left the note, and my mom was one of those who believed it, so she and her best friend were the first to run out of that house. The priest appeared visibly frightened in the following masses, and many times he could be seen trembling as he distributed the Eucharist. Things remained calm for a while until the priest fell ill, and for that Sunday, another priest replaced him temporarily. Unfortunately, the substitute was found without existence several days later as he was about to leave town. It was considered a tragedy, but it happened several times whenever the priest fell ill and someone attempted to replace him. They all disappeared or met with strange fates. Some from heart attacks, others from accidents involving cars. As my mom continued to tell me, she became uncomfortable. She has always had great trust in me, and I was enjoying the story, but the cold wind and the night, along with what I felt when she told me this horror story, sent shivers down my spine. She tried to stop telling me what was left, but I insisted and convinced her. It turns out that when all the other girls had lost interest in the priest, she still had feelings for him, and for some strange reason, my mother wanted to spend at least one night with him. Mom began to help him collect the tithes and even be by his side when he distributed the Eucharist. Her best friend didn't support her, but Mom paid her no mind. Sometimes she would be alone with the priest, and he didn't even attempt anything. He was very traumatized, so Mom limited herself to talking to him. In one of these conversations, my mother asked him if it was true that he had the devil trampled underfoot, but the priest didn't dare to answer. He didn't get upset, but he just made a grimace and didn't respond. Mom didn't distance herself from him. Sometimes my grandmother sent her to take some food to the priest at night since the tithes were scarce, and no one was contributing to the church by then. My mother said that after a while, there was a possibility that the priest would start feeling attracted to her, and that's when she took the opportunity to make a comment, telling him that for his age, he looked very attractive as he was already in his 40s. The priest became noticeably friendlier with her as the days went by, until my mom once again bathed in the rain, alone. She walked along the embankment again and found the priest there. He invited her to the parish to dry her clothes, even though my mom's house was much closer, but she accepted. Once inside the church, they began to chat, and the conversation started to heat up. In a matter of moments, the priest was very close to her, almost to the point where they could feel each other's breath, and that's when things took a dark turn. Just before their lips could touch, my mother felt a chilling sensation, far from normal. But then, a tingling sensation began from the tip of her toes to her head, and that's when she realized she had lost control of her body. She tried to scream or tell the priest what was happening, but it was already too late. Her eyes could only observe what was happening. My mother started moving around the church like a spider, jumping between the pews, and she could see the terror and horror in the priest's face. The moment came when the servant of good was cornered, and that's when she leaned in close to the priest's ear and whispered,
I thought you had me trampled underfoot.
After that, my mom fell unconscious and woke up at the village healer's house with my grandparents and the witch. She says she still doesn't understand how she lost control of her body, let alone why she said that to the priest. That same night, the priest left the town. Weeks later, news arrived that he was giving sermons in another state, but it didn't last long because he had taken his own existence. They found him suspended from a rope, swinging from left to right in the church where he was staying. In less time than one would think, the stories about witches and the like became mere tales. Mom reunited with her old friends, and they didn't even mention the topic of witchcraft, her demonic possession, or the woman washing dishes at her friend's house. They tried their best not to bring it up, out of fear that all those inexplicable things would happen again. Above all, the community learned that it's best not to meddle with the devil because many strange things can start happening. Story written for Dark Secret by Johnny.